Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week 7 of the Bridging Worlds Faith, Identity, and the Power to Change. As you can tell, I'm a little bit congested. I've been in air conditioning as I've been traveling through the Balkans, and I live in the natural world. I don't do air conditioning. So I'm a little bit congested, so I might have to put myself on mute. So just putting that out there first, if I need to cough my guts up or blow my nose, very glamorous lifestyle that I lead with going to bed with toilet roll. And a great book, obviously. So today is the 4th of September, 2025, and we're going to be discussing the weight we carry, generational trauma and wounding. Now, this has been quite an emotional one for me to do because it's brought up a lot of the emotional wounding that I've had in my family and a lot of the stuff that I've had to release. Now, as I've said before, this series is based on my first book, Friday Bridge, and it talks about my life and in the way that there are certain things that were coming up that I needed to deal with for me to be able to go on to achieve the success that I've achieved. So without further ado, let's get cracking. So today we're going to be covering how unhealed wounds echoes through families and communities, the psychology of inherited trauma, the impact of silence and shame, on identity and belonging, what healing looks like when we choose to stop passing pain forward. Our weight is a sign of unresolved trauma, and carried through generations, shaping not just our individuals, but our entire families and cultures. Now, I'm going to be talking about a place that I visited in Costa Rica called La Carpio. And so that I'll be using that as a bit of a case study for this, as well as my own journey. Because one of the things that I like to do is I like to speak about my own journey because I know that, and I don't like talking about other people's because I find that unfair. I find that that is not, I will never know their journey. I will never know all the different sides of the journey that somebody else has been on. So for me, it lacks integrity to talk about others unless I've had permission to share a client's journey. But when it comes to stuff like this, I just feel it's better to talk from what we know in our own lived experience. So as always, I wanted to put into context what trauma actually is and the generational wounding. So trauma, for those of us who live with it, is when we experience very stressful, frightening, or distressing events. Now, that could be anything from disassociation. It could be triggering where we have like nightmares, not to be confused with just bad dreams, and cognitive dissonance, so where we're actually detached, or disassociation, which again, not to be confused with daydreaming. I recently had somebody assess my own mental health. And the PTSD that came up and the CPTSD that came up after the court case that I had in December 2024, where I was actually put on trial for being spiked and raped. And the woman who assessed me, she belittled all of my conditions because she didn't understand them, and why she was an assessor, God only knows. But again, these are some of the things that we cannot control. We find it difficult to cope with certain things. So, for example, a very recent experience, my son finished a call last night at early hours of the morning. I'm fast asleep. He goes and has his shower. We're in a new location, and I woke up and I was like, oh my God, there's somebody in the building. And I freaked out for a bit. So again, this is sometimes how it can manifest. And although a lot of people might be freaked out by that without having trauma, those of us who have been through trauma, it's heightened for us. And it took me hours to get back to sleep last night. So again, it's about things that a lot of people might go through, but when you've been through trauma, especially generational trauma, and you've had limiting beliefs pushed on you, then it actually is amplified. You might feel a sense of helplessness. I didn't know how to move last night. It might be, as I said, like confusion. It might bring up a lot of other stuff. And it might have just been because I was preparing this slideshow for you today. But one thing that we can do is we need to know and we need to understand that because we have CPTSD and PTSD, it doesn't mean it's a permanent thing. These things can be healed and they can be let go of if we're willing to do the work, and if we're willing to have those dark night of the souls, if we're willing to face the demons that result in ourselves. So now we've got the definitions and a couple of examples done, we're going to move on. So I'm going to use this word epigenetics. Now, those of you who have known about Dr. Joe Dispenza, you'll know that he talks about this a lot. If you haven't looked into who Dr. Joe Dispenza is, I highly recommend you do so. He wrote a book called The Placebo Is You, or no, You Are the Placebo, sorry. And he also wrote Becoming Supernatural and a few other books as well. He's got some fantastic meditations, and he does these retreats. And basically epigenetics is a study of how genes are turned on and off over time, so that if we are experiencing trauma throughout our families, like there's a lineage, because of the mindset, because of the foods, because of the environment, our genes will actually start shutting things down and turning others on. And so our evolution looks different to others. It's like if you're constantly eating certain foods, then your lineage and your children, they're not born with as much health as the generation that birthed them, and so on and so on. And that is one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of like babies being born, and like a lot of obesity and overweight babies. And we're also seeing it in children that have got alcohol. I can't remember what the terminology, but if a mother has been drinking throughout her pregnancy, or there's been drug abuse, the children's learning and functionality is different. So I'm not a scientist of epigenetics, so I highly recommend you go and study it if you've got any questions. But that is a brief summary of that. And again, this is dated the 4th of September 2025. So this is the science that I know as of this date. So if any of you have got any additional science information that you'd like to add, then please do put some notes. But again, I do highly recommend you go and speak to go and listen to or read about Dr. Joe Dispenza. And one of the things with generational trauma, for example, with my family, it was like there were certain things we were never allowed to do certain things. We were shamed for doing or speaking about certain things, and if we wanted something that my family couldn't provide, we were told that, well, I was told that, oh, you think you're better than us. So there's a lot of shaming just because I aspired to something bigger and better and more successful. You tend to find that there's a lot of shaming, and there are certain things that that you want to know that are brushed under the carpet. And I've always said that, just because you sweep glass under a carpet doesn't stop it from cutting you. And over time, that carpet is going to wear thin, and it's going to continue to cut your family and shred your feet until there is nothing left. And we see it with families that are here in Britain that are on the benefit scheme. That we're seeing 4th and 5th generation families. It's not right that they go to university. It's not right that they want something better than, are your parents not good enough? Is what we're doing not good enough? And these are some of the kind of things that we're seeing. If you've had parents that were abused as their own children, it might be that they become overprotective of you, or they might have gone on to abuse yourself or siblings. You might have somebody who was completely we're in a family where there was complete control over everything that they said and did and went. And so then you've got the other end of the scale where they've allowed their children to run riot, and that there is no discipline. So they've gone from one end of the scale to the other, and there are certain things that we know that we have no way of knowing about our families, and we feel them in our bodies. We know that there's something, because I like to use the example that when you walk into a room and you know that somebody's had an argument, or that there's chemistry between two people, you can feel it. And the same goes for certain traumas or avoidance of conversations. Like if, for example, there are certain things I've wanted to speak to my mum about and she refuses to speak to me about them. And I understand as an adult now that she has her own trauma around certain things, and she projects that onto me. And I am that, as I've said before, I am that annoying person in the classroom who would always ask why. I've always got the questions. And that's confronting for some of our parents because they were never given the tools on how to answer them or how to process those things. So even though I now have the tools and I've had to find them out myself, and I've had to go through the pain and I've had to go through the trauma and the dark nights of the soul and all the learning and all the therapy and all the coaching, um, you know, sometimes we just have to do it ourselves because we have to make that choice. It stops with me or we continue it. And sometimes we just know that we are never going to get the help or the tools we need from our family. And then it's about looking at, okay, where can I get the answers that I need? Where is it that, so for example, my dad, not my father, my dad, is my stepdad, but I call him my dad. He came from he was a single child of older parents. They weren't very lovey-dovey. There was so much love from my grandparents, but they were never touchy-feely. And there was never lots of hugs given. And my dad has never told my mum or me and my brother and sister that he loves us because they're just not words he uses, but he has shown it to us in other ways. Now, was that enough for us? Is a different thing. And again, because we had a father, there was that he didn't want to overstep his mark because yes, he was our dad, he was a stepdad, but we had a father. And so, there was that balance that he had to try and play and create. And again, it's about us as adults honoring where our parents came from, honoring the journey and the times, because different times, different nations, different cultures within, and the different cultures within nations, they manifest in ways that I can't. Some of the things that my youngest son and I are talking about, I'm like, I can't even begin to imagine that. Like the world of work with AI, I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, I know what AI is to some degree, but the world of work that kids are growing up with today, like teenagers, and the future they see for themselves, is so different. And again, it's like, I will go there with my children. I will have them confront me and stand up to me and negotiate with me. It's something I always encourage because I never had it. And this is the thing why we look at healing the wounds of the past. And there are certain things, like I inherited from my mum a victim mentality, in the sense that I always feel shame, I always feel guilt, I always feel that I'm not enough. And that's something that I gained from my mum and words that she would say. And those of you who will buy my next book, Owning Our Ovaries, Unleashing the Power Within, when you read my story, it's about choosing me. And it's about letting go of the stories that our parents have passed on, letting go of their limiting beliefs or their own personal victim stories, because otherwise we pass it on. And this is why I say it's a collective thing. Generational trauma isn't something that just affects an individual. And I mentioned at the top of this that I was going to speak about my work in La Carpio in Costa Rica. And I was only there a very, very short time. I helped teach some of the kids some English. I helped with some of the entrepreneurial projects that the girls were working on, making beads, necklaces, that kind of thing. And listening to Gail, who runs the humanitarian foundation out there. There's a link to it on my website. So if you want to donate, go find out a bit more as well. Then there's a link on my website under the activist page. But again, it's like looking at how the Contra War and the devastation that was caused by the volcanic explosions, and how these families had to migrate south from Nicaragua into Costa Rica. These were refugees. There was people that were seeking safety. And they crossed crocodile-infested waters just to get there. They had to go through so much. And there was due to the Contra War, women were raped, there were children seeing their families murdered in front of them, as we're seeing with a lot of wars. And the children of Gaza, and the people that have lived through the occupation and the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, Rwanda, and we've seen it in East Timor, and the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, and the indigenous communities across the world, and the colonialization of parts of Africa and Australia, with the Aborigines and the Maoris in New Zealand. When you look at how colonialism and oppression has happened, and there's this slave mentality that we've got, and this whore mentality. People are afraid of standing up for what they want, and women, as a collective group, we don't challenge a lot of times. So when women like myself, we challenge the narrative, we call out the bullshit, we go after what we want. We're very driven, we're very alpha in a lot of ways. Women who are still living under the generational trauma and wounding from women's oppression over the generations, they're the ones that will placate. They're the ones that will just be nice, let them, we've got to just let them be. And, if that makes them happy. No, if it does, the thing is, if it makes somebody happy, that's one thing. But if it's actually changing things as a collective and making them worse, or it's actually causing trauma to other people, then we have to look at it. So this is why I'm saying it's a collective thing, because when you're seeing that it takes generations to heal some of these wounds. Now, my mum did a much better job than her mum, because my mum had a different set of tools. My mum was stubborn. I get a lot of my stubbornness from my mum, my independence, my fuck it mentality, from my mum. And so I have actually taken what she's taught me, both consciously and unconsciously, to say, you know what, all of this stops with me. But there are some things that I have been through that I've actually passed on to my children, but I'm having those conversations with them so that we can actually identify how they can stop this generational trauma and wounding, so that when they have children, it doesn't impact them. And thank goodness to say that we've done some really great work together as a family. We're healing as a family, because we have to heal as a collective. And when we heal as a family, the knock-on effect of that. So, for example, when I left my children to go and do my healing, people would attack me, and they'll say, you're a really bad mother because you've left your children with their dad. I'm like, yeah, I left them with the man I chose to have children with. I didn't just leave them outside of a supermarket or a train station and go, oh, crack on, lads, see you in a few years. But I had to go and distance myself, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be here. So wasn't it better that I just stepped away to do my healing than leave my boys without a mother? Sometimes the choices we make are really difficult. Sometimes we're not going to see the impact of the choices we make until years later. But again, it's about breaking those cycles. It's about making sure that we remain and we acknowledge the connection to our parents and the roots of these traumas. And understand that they're different generations. We have more knowledge, we have more understanding of the human psyche. We understand how trauma resonates and stays in the cells. We have something, those of us who love training in the gym, we're told, that once, if we've had a break, we've had an injury and we gain weight, then muscle memory will kick in. The cells of our bodies, they store trauma. It's one of the reasons why I've had an on-off love affair with yoga over these years, because when you're doing yoga and you're doing Pilates and things like that, you're doing mobility, movement exercises, you're releasing the trauma. When you're doing breath work, you're releasing the trauma on a cellular level. And when you do this deep work, you do become really, really tired and really, really exhausted, because you are busy on a cellular level. And moving on, a lot of our parents, they do want to give their kids a better life than they had. We hear it all the time, but then what we're hearing on the other side is money doesn't grow on trees, or you think you're better than us, don't get ideas above your station. And some of these things I've heard so many of my clients over the years say that their parents have told them, and it's like, no, you have to become a doctor, you have to become an accountant, this is what our family does. These are all still trauma, because the individuals are not being given a choice. as to who they can become. They shut themselves down because this is what is expected of them. We're seeing in lots of different levels of society that, if you have married somebody from a different nation or a different tribe or a different ethnicity, these kind of where you've had to choose between your family and the person that you're in love with or the society rules. It might be that you were born of rape, and your parents, your mum can't talk to you about your dad, or you were given up for adoption, or your parents died when you were a baby, or and it's like looking at all of these different generational traumas that there are people that were put in a very difficult situation where they had to give away their child. Now, what does the impact of that have on the mother, and what does that have on the child? And also the fathers that are not given a choice to become fathers. When a woman says, well, you know what, yeah, we've got pregnant, this is my body, I'm aborting the child because I don't want a baby. How is that impacting the father? Men have a choice as well. It's not just the woman's body. If you have allowed yourself to get into a situation where you have ended up pregnant, take responsibility for that. Not a very popular opinion, but there were two people making that baby. And, carrying a baby is only 9 months of your life, whereas this is a child's whole life. This might be the father's only chance to have a baby. So again, these are some of the traumas we have to look at. And, we've got to look at how the pressures from external people and all these narratives, and again, I have some opinions that are very unpopular, and you might actually receive some hate, but that is nothing to do with your situation. Each situation is very unique, and hopefully that regardless of what the trauma is or what the situation is, you and the individuals that were in that together can make an informed choice together. Even my opinion doesn't matter to somebody else. Nothing that I say here today or on any of my shows, not for me to pass judgment on anybody. These are just ideas that I have based on my own upbringing, my own beliefs. It's that with siblings, they're very jealous and very spiteful, and the more successful I become, the more they don't want to be in my life. They want to be more spiteful, more jealous, and more hate filled, and they've passed that on to their children. So much so, when I met my nephew after many years, he goes, "You're not as horrible as they make out, Auntie Dawn." No. And then this is the thing, when we're talking about other people's situations, which is, as I said at the beginning, I don't like to talk about other people's situations because I don't know the full story. But again, when we're talking about traumas within families, if there has been issues between siblings or between the child and the parent, how have aunties and uncles or cousins got involved, and has it been spread around the family or the neighborhood, and that's the bad child or that's the naughty child. Or even in the classroom, when you've had a teacher say to a child, I'd like you to read out loud, and the other children have laughed, or the teacher said, oh, you're not very good at reading, come stay behind. It's public humiliation. The teacher probably doesn't mean it in that way, but again, this is a trauma, and we have to be very careful about how we're speaking, and find out why people are thinking the way they are, why they're acting the way that they are. Are they doing, one of the conversations I was having recently is this drive for AI, and AI writing everything. Is this because the people that were shamed at school for writing or shamed at school for reading, this is why people don't read books? They're embarrassed and say that they read books. They're embarrassed to do their writing. That's why they rely so much on AI, because they have this limiting belief caused by trauma in the school or by their parents that they're not a very good writer. There are, to be honest with you, I don't think there are any right or wrong answers to writing. Yes, grammar, making sure that we know our shit and we know our shit. Or as the phrase says, there are certain things that, where you place that comma doesn't actually really matter. But again, where is that trauma coming from? Where is that embarrassment? Where is that shame that's been put on you? Can you then take it off? It's like a jumper, or a sweater. In some countries, they call them sweaters, don't they? England, we call them jumpers, or hoodies, if it's got a hood on it. So again, remember that you can always take it off. It's never going to be easy. And people that hoard a lot of things, what are you hanging on to? You're hanging on to a past that no longer is there. You're hanging on to what could have been. You're hanging on to trapped energy, or you're hanging on to a sadness or a grief you're afraid to let go because you don't know what the future holds. When you're hoarding things, you're trapping all of this negativity, creating dust and dirt, and there's no airflow and there's no energy flow, and then if you're hoarding to such a degree, there's like I was going to say the aroma, but I attach aroma more to food. But that smell of people hoarding, and that not taking care of themselves, and we can see it with people who've gained a lot of weight, like myself. I know that I've gained weight leading up to and after the court case. I have had a thing about comfort eating because I remember being so blissfully happy with my nan and granddad. My nan used to bake cakes. That was my happy place, baking cakes with my nan and eating them. So when I get sad or traumatized, or the trauma comes back up, I tend to eat. And I've gained weight, and I had a shoulder injury, which didn't actually help either. And from my MMA days, and that sometimes it reactivates. But again, it's like, if the weight comes on slowly, then we can take it off slowly. It's about honoring our bodies, about honoring our journey, and saying, I matter. I'm really important. I come first in my life. Even as a parent, we come first and our children come second, because if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not leading by example and we're not loving ourselves, how are we teaching our children to love themselves? How are we teaching them to honor themselves? How are we teaching them to respect themselves? So if we are gaining weight, then we're not making enough time for our own well-being. And well-being, there's a reason why it's called well-being, because you are being well, and hopefully that will last you for a long time to come. And as adults, we really can't carry on blaming our parents or blaming our upbringing or blaming the past. We get to have a choice. And this is, again, we get to choose who we are. We get to choose the journey we take. We can either keep blaming everybody else, and we can blame our upbringing, or we can actually take responsibility for it. And a lot of people say, oh, it happened to me. No, nothing happens to you. When you say that it happens to me, you're saying you're a victim. When you step away from the victim mode and the pity parties and, looking for sympathy because you're a victim, you can then step into an egoic way of saying it happened for you. So you can look at how this happened. Why did this happen for me? What was it I was there to learn? What was it I was needing to have acknowledged? What was it I need to release? And then when we look at what happened, and as something that happens through us, it's how we can alchemize that. So, for example, I'm now alchemizing everything that I've been through in my books and sharing this with you. You tend to find a lot of coaches and a lot of leaders, people who write memoirs, they're saying this happened through me, because what we're doing is we're taking these events, we're taking this trauma, and we're alchemizing it through the written word so that we can share it with others so that they can heal. And then that's as it's happening through me. And as it happens as me, then this is a total surrender. Very few people get there. I'm not even at that point. Gosh, that'd be great, that would. I do surrender. Like yesterday, I was in the water, I was in the ocean, my happy place, and I just lay there floating, just surrendering to the universe, saying, just take me, show me the way, guide me. And again, it's about understanding that this is a legacy that we get to create. We get to heal our past. We get to choose whether we're still going to be a victim, or whether we're going to be in our ego, or we're going to surrender or step into enlightenment as it's happening as me. We are all divine beings. We're all connected. And so this is one of the reasons why I have chosen to put a distance between me and my family. I can't have them in my life. They're too toxic. They're too selfish, too nasty. It's always me that gets upset. It's like sending the lamb to the slaughter every single time. And I refuse to allow that to happen. I refuse to allow myself to be abused. I refuse to allow them to speak of my children the way they did, or dismiss us, because we're important. And I don't want those attitudes in my life. And again, it's like friends. If you're speaking to a friend who, you're trying to share what you're going through, and the friend says that you're whinging, well, you kind of know that that person's no longer there in the space that you need them to be, because sharing what we're going through, and how things are impacting, so maybe their behavior is impacting you in a certain way, or you're checking in to see how what you're going through impacts them, and they come back saying you're whinging, then you know that there's a disconnect, and then you need a distance. I'm not saying break it off completely, but you need distance. Looking at how can you be all of yourself around these people? Can you share your beliefs? Can you are your lifestyles cohesive? Are they allowing you to become the best version of yourself? Because if you're in a cycle of behavior where you are with people and certain things happen, like you might have quit drinking and then you go and be with people and then you start drinking again, or people that have had really serious drug addictions such as alcoholism, or heroin addiction or cocaine addiction. If you being around people is going to drag you back into that, put a distance, stop being around them. And the same with limiting beliefs. If people have got a certain belief or an ideology that they're following, and that does not sit right with you, walk away from it. There are some ideologies out there at the moment that are really trying to mess with people's heads, mess with language structure. There are, and there are, excuse me, I knew that was coming. And we've got to look at how these certain beliefs are imposing on other people's. Only this belief matters, and only we matter, and you have to do what we want and say what we want and be as we want you to be, but they're only 0.01% of the people, if that, in the world. So again, it's about looking at, okay, well, I don't associate with that. I don't believe that. That's yours. You can take it. I'm not going to play that game. Again, it's about choosing what and who we want to keep in our lives. And it's never going to be easy, because you will be criticized, you will be possibly attacked. Oh, excuse me.
Sorry.
I can't find the mute button. Hang on. Okay, now I've finished. Lots of talking's not great for a sore throat. God, I hate air conditioning. Okay, choosing what? I don't choose air conditioning. I choose a fan. I'd rather be hot and sweaty than be in air conditioning. But hey, when you're traveling, sometimes you need to be in air conditioning. But again, like I said, releasing and surrendering to some of the but releasing some of the beliefs or the values or the morals that other people have that don't fit with yours. Yeah, or the vocabulary that some people use. It's not ours. We don't need to choose it. We can let it go. We can surrender it. If my parents have limiting beliefs, that's on them. That's from them. It's not mine. I don't have to carry it anymore. And sometimes we have to choose ourselves. Every moment we might be in a situation where it's, oh my God, I really, you might go somewhere and you're presented with a reminder, and you can say, well, I can choose how I respond to this. My youngest son is amazing at this. He's like, Mum, it's only bothering you. Don't let it bother you. Like, he's so super calm. I'm like, oh my God, lend that to me. I need to be a bit more like my youngest son. So I can see that the work that I have done, um, there's still a way to go, because I see how he is. And he's like, yeah, just let it go. And you don't need to be reminded, because as he also said, if we truly believed and accepted something, we wouldn't need to keep reminding ourselves. But sometimes we have to, like, this is not mine. I can return it to sender. This is not who I am. This is the old version of me. And sometimes we have to do that every hour. Sometimes we have to do it daily. Daily affirmations work for a lot of people. Meditations, walking out in nature. Sometimes you just need to step away and then come back again. It's like when I speak to my authors, if you are struggling to write something, like for example, with me doing these slides today, I have walked away from them and come back from, like, over the last few days. I was like, yep, I got to put that aside for a minute. I got to go to the beach. I got to go do swim in the sea. I've got to just leave it. I've got to play a game of cards, or I've got to go and read something, because I can't finish this, because stuff was coming up for me. I miss my parents. I would love to have a sister that I could, go out with and just share all the sisterly things, and have an older brother that protects me, and all that. But I have those siblings and I have the parents. I just don't have relationship with them, because they're not healthy for me. And again, it's about setting those boundaries. Go, I matter. My beliefs matter. My desires matter. My future matters. Because this thing is all about our future. We are not living through our parents, and our parents cannot expect to live through us, because they had their chance at life. That is their life. That's down on them. That's not on us. They cannot control us. They do not have any right to control us. We're grown-ass adults. And even if you're a child watching this, and when I say a child, I mean like coming up to 18, like a teenager. Parents do sometimes, often, I wouldn't like to say most parents, know what they're doing. None of us really know what we're doing. We're all kind of winging it. But most parents would not wish their children harm. They do want their children to have a better life than that they've had. They do nurture and support and encourage their children, but there are some not so much. So again, how do we identify whether we have generational trauma? Well, we look at the put downs and the preventions that are put in place. So for example, like, my mum always used to say, you think you're better than us. I may love you, but I don't like you very much. And so I grew up thinking, well, if my own mum doesn't like me, then why does anybody else? And there would be, I really wanted to go to university and become a teacher. But I also knew that I wanted to read and write books for a living. But because there was preventions put in place, there was all of this psychological abuse about who they were and how people like me and them, we didn't live in certain areas. Certain things were out of our range, and money, people who had money were all thought they're better than everybody else, and money is the root of all evil, and all of these things. So success was deeply embedded in my psyche as a bad thing. Having money was a bad thing, and we had to struggle, and we had to tell everyone to F off if they didn't agree with us. And whilst I could see now that that was my mum trying to really put boundaries in place for herself, like, if they don't like me as I am, then that's down on them and they can F off. But it wasn't a healthy way of doing it, because she didn't have all the tools. It's like me baking, I might have all the ingredients, and I might have a recipe, but there is something in my world that I read a recipe, I have the ingredients, I put it together, and the cake still does not come out right. Pastry, not on your Nelly. I'd love to know how to make pastry and good pastry, but the ingredients there, the recipe is there, the temperatures are right on the oven, the time I cook it is right, but for some reason, it just doesn't happen for me. Give me savoury ingredients, though. I'm your lady. Anyway, there are certain things that prevent us. There's a blind spot. Some people are gifted at baking. I'm not one of them. But again, it's about looking at, maybe it's a psychological thing, like I aspire to be like my grandma. Oh my God, the melt in the mouth pastry. Yum, yum. Her cakes were light, and maybe it's a self-sabotaging thing that I could never be as good as my grandma and I have to remember her stuff. We don't know until we go, wonder. Might have to explore that, right? But again, there's a lot of gaslighting, and emotional abuse. Like I've said, they might prevent us from having money, or they might not allow us to go out, or they might not allow us to join clubs. And that's as a child. We're adults now. Those of you who are watching this are more likely going to be adults, and you get to choose. You are legally an adult over the age of 18 and 21 if you're in the States. Again, so you might have felt a loss of power. You might have felt a loss of control over your life. And, you might have felt that, it doesn't matter who you are or what you want, and you want to do the right thing. You want your parents to be proud of you, but nothing you ever do is good enough. Nothing you ever do is going to make them proud of you. So the person that you have to give control to, you are the person you give control to. You take back your agency, you take back your power, and it might take little steps. It might be that you make yourself proud. And if you have children, it is about making yourself proud, and are they proud of you? And if they're proud of you, why are they proud of you? Try and bring those two things together. My youngest son said to me the other day when I was having a hormonal meltdown, Mum, you've written more books than most people read in their lifetime. That was a bit of perspective for me. So these are the kind of things. It's like when you have these conversations, this collective healing, this collective perspective with people who want the best for you. Never go to someone for advice and celebration if they've never done what it is that you're doing, or that have ever had goals. There is no way that I'm going to go and ask weight loss advice from someone who is obese. There is no way I'm going to go and ask for advice from somebody on how to bake a cake if all they've done is microwave their food. They're not my kind of people. I don't do microwave food. I heat up coffee in the microwave if there is one, but mainly on the stove. But anyway, again, it's about if you are dreading family get-togethers, these are some of the things that, if you are feeling that, oh God, I've got to go, so-and-so's going to be there, it's going to be more like last time. You're making excuses to leave before you've even arrived. You're really mentally preparing yourself to deal with something, and you are, can I do this? Do I want to do this? I have something called the party test. If you were to invite a lot of people or everyone you know to a party, and each of those people said yes, how would you feel? Would you feel excited, or would you feel, oh my God, they said yes? All those people that you felt, oh my God, they said yes, put a distance. Put a distance between you and them. All the people you were like, yes, they're coming. These are the people, this is the energy you want to be stepping into. But also be asking yourself, why did you say yes? And why did you, oh my God, they said yes? Tap into that energy. It's telling you something. If you are in that place where you're constantly walking on eggshells, worried that someone's going to say something, or they're going to take something that you've said in the wrong way, have a conversation. And if they're not willing to have that conversation, and they're going to blame you and it's all your fault and you don't understand, and blah, 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 give it more water needed. If you've got this unnecessary guilt around a certain situation that you really had nothing to do with, it's not your fault that these people feel this way about you. You have got to do you. Like I've said before, I may not agree with certain lifestyles that people choose, but I am free to choose that if I wish to. I am free to believe what I believe about certain things, because it comes from experience. It comes from an informed, um, it's an informed opinion. It's not just an opinion. Um, if I am wrong about something, I'll admit that I'm wrong. But because I always invite people to guide me, then or to give me a different perspective or to give me new knowledge, then, hate to say it, but I'm very rarely wrong. Um, because I invite it and I never really speak about something that I don't know about, because for me, that's a lack of integrity. Again, you might be going to this family get together or, a wedding, family weddings. Why is it you're going? Because you know that Uncle so-and-so is going to be there and he's a bit of a slime bag, a bit too touchy-feely with the girls. You might want to sit, you don't want to see Auntie Mabel because, all she does is grab your cheeks and like tells people how, you're this and you're that. And, she still treats you like a child, but in a condescending way. And, and you might be losing a lack of sleep or appetite. And I'm touching on some lighter trauma things now. But obviously, if there is somebody in your family that abused you in a certain way, or is a really dark individual, or that they're going to be there and they're going to be wanting to go off for a quick line in the toilets, and they might want to go for a cheeky bifter, as we used to call it back in my raving days. A bifter is a joint, or a spliff, regardless of however you want to name it, and you don't want to be around that. Maybe just stay for the meal and leave afterwards. So thanks ever so much. It was great service, great meal, thanks, but I need to go. You remove yourself from, and if you get blame thrown at you, or you're made to feel guilty because of it, then again, it's not your environment. Don't go again. Thank them first, send them their present, move on. Because you need to honor who you are. You need to focus on your future. What is your future goals? Who is the person you want to be? Not who did they want you to be, because you are not living your life for them. You're living it for you. And you need to live your life for you, not for them. They're living their life. And if they want to do it through you, then that's on them. Never be ashamed of focusing on you and your future, ever. Never numb it. Never numb your future. Never numb the pain you're feeling. Release it. Don't drink it away. Don't drug it away. Don't sex it away or exercise it away. Feel those emotions. It's energy in motion, emotion. Thank it. Thank the pain you've been through. Thank the trauma. Go, you know what? Thanks for that. I've learned a lot, but I don't need you anymore. Release it. Move on. I'm making it sound a lot easier than it is. It truly isn't. Some people say, it's just like that. You just get to choose. It's like, yeah, you do. But then you get hit by another Mack truck further down the line. Like I said, in December, I was put on trial for being spiked and raped. And it was like, okay, it felt very real this time, because when it first happened, I was shocked. I was numb. I wasn't aware, like there was so much going on right then. And then when you're put on trial all these years later, you've distanced, you're not in shock, you're not numb anymore. And so it becomes very real. And it's about the people around you supporting you, being there for you, that are really going to make the difference in your life. And they're going to help you. They're going to go, right, okay, I get where you're at. I may not understand it, but I get where you're at. What can I do to help you? These are the people that you need around you. How can I help you move forward? How can I help you release? And think about, what did your inner child or that person at that age need from you at that point? So for example, when I work with my clients, I take them back, I do regression techniques. It's like, how old were you when you first had this? Okay, what were you feeling? What did you need? And we go, I'm making it very simple here, but again, it's about looking at your inner child, looking at your younger self. What did you need at that point? Who did you need? What words did you need to hear? What emotions did you need to feel? What kind of environment did you need around you? You can create that for yourself. Truly, you can. You can do it through talk therapy, through meditation, CBT, and tapping. Tapping is also really good if you are looking at foods or products that you want to put on your body. It's easy when you've got somebody with you. You just hold the item and then you tap in a certain way, or you do these muscle release things like you hold it and then someone pushes your arm down, or, you know, there are lots of different ways. Talk therapy and mediation are very, very common. You might want to use art therapy, such as my beautiful client and friend Amanda Denham, who has just released fully today on paperback and ebook her book 7 Feathers. She uses a lot of art therapy. She talks about it in her first book, Sin Eater. Layla, who was the lady whose book story I shared in Layla. Layla is not her real name. It was the second book in the sequel series. She used art therapy to heal her pain. And it's a very visual healing modality. You might want to join me for my Right to Heal program. I do this on an individual basis, and we use a lot of narrative coaching as part of the author coaching process that I do, and that was one of the reasons why I help people write their memoirs. Some people, like myself, my dear friend Sue Winsbury, she does work with us as somatic attachment. I know we're seeing a lot of people say somatic yoga, somatic this, somatic that. I trust Sue. She's been working in the burnout leadership field for a very long time. She does a lot of energy work. I have experienced Sue's magic. So if you really want to know more about somatic attachment, you need to look up Sue Winsbury. Some people have used ayahuasca. It was something that, you know, people asked me if I was using when I was out in Latin America. I didn't use ayahuasca. She didn't speak to me, the plant. You know, the plant medicine, I call it a plant, I call it a she. Mother Nature, Mother Gaia. But I did a cacao fire ceremony that really, really was mind-blowing. That was like I burnt my life and business to the ground to reborn. That was in the mountains of Colombia. That was a very beautiful experience, but again, you've got to choose something that works for you. You've got to find something. I don't take antidepressants. I don't take any big pharma drugs unless I've got a migraine. And because I like to feel the pain, I like to listen to it, I like to see where it's showing up in my body, I like to release it. Dear friend of mine, Tim Neal and Tracy Hamilton, they do something called the Trinity Coherence Procedure, and it's about rewiring your nervous system. Again, I've been working with them. Tim has known me since I was 21. He knows, you know, like what he has achieved in his life and for his clients is absolutely brilliant. So, you know, you've got those resources there. There are lots of different ways we can heal from generational trauma and wounding if we choose to. Because remember, when we have generational wounds and trauma, we can say this stops here. With me, it stops. It stops with me. Return it to sender because it's not yours. It's from the past. Let it go. And release your past, release the people, and always ask yourself, what do I need right now? Do you need to just be out in nature? Do you need just to be silent? Do you just need to sleep? Do you just need a cup of tea and a good book? Which is always a winner in my place. And remember that soul always knows. So look deep within and remember to choose wisely, to choose joy, and to always choose you, because you're absolutely worth it. And as always, I have the book Friday Bridge, which inspired this series. You can actually read about all of the different things that went on in my life that led me to creating this series, this 20-week series. It's the book Friday Bridge. And it talks about lots of different things within, and how I actually had to overcome quite a lot just to live the life that I wanted to live. If you would like to book a narrative coaching inquiry session with myself, then please do so. They open up again. I don't know why it's got Friday. I'm not going to be able to do anything on Friday, so I need to get that sorted, get my team to update my diary. And then I'll be back in the office on the 15th, where I will hopefully be taking some of your inquiries. All right, then. Well, that's it from me today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Thank you for joining me today. If you've got any questions, please do drop them onto the YouTube channel, or actually go to my website and send me a message through there. If you would like to book a session with me, use the link that my gorgeous VA Tai will be sharing within all the different places and on all the different things. And if you haven't yet purchased Friday Bridge, please do so. And if you have read it, please go and leave a review so other people know what to expect. And in the meantime, now I'm going to go to the beach and go do some sunbathing and some ocean meditation. Just lie there and float in the sea and just surrender. So have a fabulous day wherever you are, and thank you for joining me. Ciao for now.